It was supposed to be a quiet weekend. Mark had driven 3 hours into the mountains to finally unwind at his late father's cabin, a place filled with memories, laughter, and peace. But that peace shattered when 3 unfamiliar SUVs rolled up the gravel driveway. Men in black jackets stepped out, carrying clipboards and attitude. One of them shouted, "HOA Security. You're violating community codes." Mark blinked. HOA? What HOA? This cabin was miles outside any subdivision. Within minutes, they began taking pictures, inspecting fences, and scribbling notes like they owned the place. Then came the woman behind it all, Karen. She strutted up the path in heels, holding a tablet. "Sir, this property is under HOA jurisdiction. You'll need to remove that old shed immediately." Mark tried to reason, but she cut him off, smug and certain. "We've expanded our boundaries. New rules apply to everyone nearby." But as she smirked and her security took photos of his home, something inside Mark tightened. He decided to play it calm, for now, because he knew something Karen didn't. This cabin wasn't just a vacation spot. It was built by veterans. And help was only one phone call away. Mark spent that night digging through old paperwork, deeds, maps, legal boundaries. Sure enough, the HOA had no claim. They were bluffing. But that didn't stop Karen. By morning, she was back, snapping pictures of the mailbox this time. "Illegal structure," she declared. "Karen," Mark said evenly, "this cabin's been here longer than your subdivision existed." But she wasn't listening. She had an audience now, a few curious neighbors she'd dragged along to show an example. Mark realized it wasn't about rules. It was about control. When she posted photos online labeling him a non-compliant squatter, Mark's patience cracked. He called the local county office. They confirmed his land was private. HOA had zero authority. Still, Karen refused to back off. "We'll handle this our way," she hissed. That evening, Mark made one quiet call to his cousin Jake, a U.S. Army veteran who'd helped build the cabin years ago. Jake chuckled over the phone. "HOA trouble in the woods? Don't worry, cousin. We'll visit this weekend. The boys could use a ride." Mark smiled for the first time in days. Karen had no idea what storm was about to roll up her hill. 2 days later, things took a darker turn. The so-called HOA Security came again, this time, with printed warnings taped to his cabin door. "Unauthorized dwelling. Subject to removal." Mark laughed in disbelief. "Removal? Of my own home?" He filmed everything, every false warning, every threat. When he tried to confront them, they only smirked. "Talk to Karen." She stood by the road, sipping coffee, clearly enjoying every second. Mark uploaded the footage online. Fake HOA harassing private cabin owner. It gained traction fast. People were furious, calling out Karen's power trip, but she wasn't done. That evening, her security blocked Mark's driveway with their cars. "You're trespassing on HOA property," one barked. Mark stared calmly and said, "You might want to move those before morning." They laughed, unaware of what that morning would bring: the rumble of engines, the sound of freedom on 2 wheels, and the return of soldiers who didn't take kindly to bullies. The sun rose slow and golden over the mountains. The HOA security men were still there, lounging near their vehicles. Then, a distant sound echoed through the valley, low, steady, and growing louder: engines. Many of them. Karen stepped outside, shading her eyes, just in time to see 6 Harley Davidsons rolling up the dirt road in formation. Dust clouded behind them as Jake and his veteran friends pulled in, boots hitting the ground in perfect rhythm. "Morning," Jake said, grinning under his shades. "Heard someone's got boundary issues." Karen froze. Her so-called guards straightened nervously. Mark stood beside his cousin, calm and smiling. "These guys helped build this cabin. They're just here to make sure everything's peaceful." Jake leaned closer to Karen. "You're not authorized to be here, ma'am." "County line's back there." He pointed toward the road. Karen tried to speak, but her voice cracked. We're just enforcing HOA rules." Jake smiled. "On private land? Bold move." The guards exchanged looks. Within seconds, they backed away, muttering excuses. The sound of retreating tires was sweeter than any victory song. Karen's pride, however, didn't vanish with her security. She returned the next day, this time with printed maps and a lawyer. Mark met her at the gate, flanked by Jake and his friends. Her lawyer cleared his throat. "We believe this land falls under HOA extension," Mark interrupted. "You believe wrong. Here's the county record." He handed over certified documents with stamps and signatures. "This land has belonged to my family for 50 years. You have no jurisdiction." Karen's lawyer hesitated. "Still, HOA has rights to enforce," Jake cut in with a smirk. "You planning to enforce something on federal land?" "Because part of this property's under a veterans preservation program." Karen's face drained of color. The lawyer packed up quickly. The veteran stood tall, not aggressive, just unshakably calm. Karen turned away, muttering, "You'll regret this." But as she drove off, Jake whispered, "Funny. We already don't." Mark finally exhaled. The cabin, silent once more, felt alive again. Days passed. No HOA letters, no security, no noise, just quiet wind and laughter from Mark's veteran friends as they grilled outside. Then came an envelope, not an apology, but an invitation to an HOA meeting to discuss property cooperation. Mark almost laughed. Instead, he showed up, with Jake beside him. Karen froze when they entered the hall. The audience, her neighbors, looked curious. Mark calmly projected photos, county maps, and video clips of Karen's harassment. Gasps filled the room. Someone muttered, "She went to his cabin?" Karen stammered, "It was a misunderstanding," but the crowd wasn't buying it. The HOA president cleared his throat. "Ms. Karen, you've overstepped authority. You're suspended indefinitely." Mark nodded politely, then turned to leave. Outside, Jake said quietly, "No apology?" Mark smiled. "Didn't need one. The truth did the talking." Weeks later, Mark received a small package, no name, no return address. Inside was a note, "You were right. I shouldn't have done that. Sign only, K." He placed it on the cabin shelf beside his father's old compass. The mountain wind rustled through the open window, carrying peace with it. Jake called from his Harley, "So, you ready for the next weekend ride?" Mark laughed. "Yeah. But let's stay away from HOAs this time." The men roared with laughter as the camera panned out over the Golden Hills. The cabin standing proud, untouched, unbothered, and free. What started as harassment had turned into a lesson. Some people build fences to control others, while others build homes to protect freedom. And in that mountain cabin, freedom finally won, and that was the final twist in this unbelievable HOA story. If you loved the drama, don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop a comment sharing your thoughts. It really helps this channel grow.